For those who don't know me, I'm Monica Kang. I founded a company called InnovatorsBox, and we're in this space together today because one of the things that I realize is that it is so easy for us to take for granted about the different paths that we take in life. And as I moved from nuclear weapon security to government to innovation, one of the things that constantly inspired me was how important it was to surround ourselves with different people who might look like you and think like you, and people who don't look like you, but might think like you and don't think like you. The intentional aspect. And in fact, what truly inspired me was realizing that what drove me and who inspired me were people who constantly went out of their ways to do something different and was intentional about it. And so this year, through Beyond the Box, which is a celebration of people who go beyond the box in their careers, but not only for themselves, but to really serve others and how they create momentums in communities. I'm really excited to celebrate Black History Month with all of you in highlighting 4 particular individuals that I super admire and respect and love as a person and all that they do, and really having this intentional time for us to learn, discuss, and really rethink about what it means for us to type different careers. So again, I know some of us are here from different fields, different expertise, different questions. And I asked for us to have an open, intentional space for us to think about what can we learn and what can I perhaps also contribute and walk away. And so if I can maybe perhaps set the intention before I pass it on to Corey, who's going to take a moment to share a little bit more about our context for today. I hope that you set the one intention could include curiosity. What do I want to learn more about? And why am I curious to learn more? Because many of you shared that you are hungry to innovate further in where you work, want to ideate. And I want you to think from the curious point of view and why and how we feel that. Just to highlight again, we have Terri, Corey, Derrin, and DeShuna. And I know you all got a chance to read their amazing bios and stories. But with that being said, Corey, would love to dive right in and pass it to you. What it is.
Awesome. Thank you for the handoff, Monica. And thank you everybody for being on this call today, this conversation. I think, Monica, one thing you said about intention is just, it sticks with me, because as I thought about this conversation, I really thought about asking myself the question, like, how have I been intentional around my own journey of innovating? And I think that as we talk about whatever reason you're showing up today, like, is it a career journey? Is it like a passion or a skill that you're trying to develop or cultivate? I think that it is because of conversations like this that I honestly feel like I've been able to hold myself accountable on that question. And so I'm excited to be a part of this panel, to moderate this panel with DeShuna, with Terri, with Derrin, as we really dive into what innovation means to us, why we think it's important, also like what our journey has been around that. Because I know for me, and we'll get into it with the other panelists, I know that there have been moments where I have been afraid to innovate, or I've been afraid to take those risks, and there's many motivating reasons why. And then to really think about the impact. So maybe from the lens of our careers, from the lens of our experiences that we have had as a panel, but also in sharing it with all of you. And I hope that it prompts you on the call to think about, well, what are those things that I feel like when I've leaned into it, I've definitely seen the impact. So really excited about that. And then also, I just have to say, it's Black History Month, but it should be Black History Life, because Black history is history. Certainly Black history is American history. And so to also be able to share this call with Black innovators is something I feel like already is inspiring to me, even if no other words are said. So I just want to, take a moment to really say that. And I think really being able to have that lens as we think about what innovation looks like to this community, to this space, and what we maybe have to navigate because of our identity or because of how people see us, but also how that can be in some ways how we leverage that in ways that are unique to us and provide a unique lens of perspective, I think is definitely going to come out. So excited about that, excited to dive in. And so for our first theme and for our first conversation, I mentioned that we were going to talk about innovation. What does it mean to us and why? And in particular, I think obviously InnovatorsBox thinks a lot about this topic. And so that's what we're here to talk about. Like, how are we thinking about leading and innovating in a different way? How do we define this in our different journeys? And so DeShuna, Derrin, Terri, I've looked at their backgrounds and looked at all of the dope things they've done. You've probably seen it in their backgrounds. But as a way of introducing yourselves and also kind of answering this question, like, how are you innovating, or what does innovation mean to you? I would love for you to introduce yourselves with that question as the lens. I'm going to start with DeShuna, and then the rest of the panel can jump in to answer that.
Good evening, everyone. I'm DeShuna Spencer, and I am the founder and CEO of Quilly TV. As you can see a little bit, maybe a small version of my shirt, Quilly TV. We are a streaming service that celebrates Black stories from the US, Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, even Australia. We have content from all over the world. Quilly means truth for those, in Swahili for those who don't know, and our whole mission is to create content that shows a true reflection of the global Black experience. For me, when I think about innovation, to me it's about understanding where things are going and also testing where things could go. When I came with the idea for Quilly TV, it was actually in 2012. At the time, there weren't many streaming services, literally just like Netflix and Hulu. And I applied for this pitch competition, and I was a finalist, but I didn't win. And so because I was a finalist, I can ask them like, why didn't I get the money? And they're like, well, we're not sure about the future of streaming. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I'm wrong, right? And so I think that, one of the things I've learned as an entrepreneur is that if you see things moving in a direction, then kind of go for it. Like, don't wait for the people to sort of tell you that that's where it's going. And that's being an innovator. It's sort of, seeing the market and taking advantage and finding your own lane.
Thank you. Any of the other panelists want to jump in? Go next.
I'm happy to go. So many times we think about innovation just being something that's really big and something that's flashy and bright. And I think that everything that DeShuna said is right. But sometimes you also find the innovative parts or the ingredients to a recipe inside of you. And so a lot of times I say that there are two things that I always carry like in my invisible backpack, and that's faith and fortitude. And I think both of those are tied to innovation. Faith is knowing that you are producing something that is much bigger than you. You're innovating for the greater good. You're innovating to solve some of the world's most pressing problems and in a way that's very authentic to you or the community you're serving, like Quilly TV. And fortitude is just knowing that there's always a way. Had someone like DeShuna stopped and not continue to innovate and be generative in her work, she would have never gotten to the point where she is today. And so, I think that we oftentimes talk about just the skills that are needed to be creative, but we should not also forget to pack those internal things into our backpack that make us the authentic and sincere innovators that we are.
Yeah, thanks, Terri. I think that that's a fantastic comment. That innovation is oftentimes looked at as something being this big monolithic thing that you can't tackle, and it's something that may be a wow factor. And I think it's simpler than that. I think innovation is looking at yourself and doing the thing that you think you cannot do, right? And for me, so I'm Derrin Slack, the founder and chief program officer at Proact Indy. And the way that we're innovating is helping people cross social, racial, and the economic boundaries through intentional human-centered service projects and training, right? So it's very important for us to really disrupt and innovate how people serve and how people interact with each other to really address difficult and unique social issues in our community. And it boils down to that we just don't understand each other. We just don't know like what the other is doing. And so when we innovate, the simple thing to do is, hey, we need to just see other people, right? And so we're encouraging people to get outside their box and think broader about how they can serve people in unique ways to use their skills and talents and resources, whether that be financially or with their skill sets, right? Just to serve other people that are vulnerable. And so to Terry's point, I mean, innovation is more like playing the infinite game. And so oftentimes we want to innovate to beat this other group or beat this other company or beat this other nonprofit or whatever. We are always trying to compete against someone, right? But with the infinite game, the only opponent is yourself, right? And so just be better than what you were yesterday. Innovate yourself, and everything else, in my opinion, just falls together after that. If you go after it with courage and vulnerability and perseverance.
Thank you, Derrin. I mean, a lot of insights there. I think one thing that was coming up for me is just how you start with this concept of innovation being such a big idea. Like, it's just like, sometimes I also feel like it can be a buzzword, right? But then you think about, what does it really mean? And it seems like each of you have kind of touched on, well, what it means for me is an individual journey. It means that I've in some way tapped into values, or I've tapped into a drive, or I've tapped into a community, a space that I want to serve in. And I'm doing that my way. So I really, really like that. And it seems like a few of you have touched on it. I'm going to take this from DeShuna as I saw it, on your bio, but this line, when he says, "Shine your light on the world," is from Most Def, a lyric in one of his songs. But I just feel like that really captures the essence of what you're talking about. I mean, it's your light that you're shining on the world, right? And that seems to be what innovation really feels like to each of you. Derrin, I'm going to start with you because you said something that I think segues us nicely into this next idea, which is, I mean, with your innovation, who are you serving? Like, who are you showing up for? So you're certainly showing up for yourself, but through your work and through the things that you have built through innovation, are there other people that you say you would serve? So start with you, Derrin, and then we'll go to the rest of the people.
Yeah, sure. So ProAct has been around for 10 years. We've started in 2010, and I founded ProAct out of a heart and vision to see youth and their communities interact with each other differently. And so when it comes to service learning or community engagement, I mean, oftentimes organizations that have that focus, that they focus on youth that are traditionally called leaders. So it's those youth that we see that are involved in sports, or they are high academically. And we have the National Honor Societies, the Key Clubs, Rotaracts. We have groups like that target those kids, but they usually don't look like me. All right. And so when I founded ProAct, the goal was to engage youth in the margins in human-centered service projects that they otherwise would not have access to. And so over the years, we've evolved because we realized, oh, wow, we are doing such great work engaging youth in vulnerable communities in the community to help them build skills, to help them meet new people, to see new things and do new things and develop new skills. But they are not our only beneficiaries. So we started to see corporate employees serve alongside our kids. We started to see nonprofits, and nonprofits in these companies didn't really know how to engage effectively in their communities. Nonprofits are overwhelmed because they're like, hey, I don't know how to create a wonderful experience for our volunteers, and I need help with systems and technology support. And companies are always asking themselves, hey, how do I get started in this work? How can I sustain my employees in meaningful volunteer work? And there was no framework out there. There isn't a framework to say, hey, this is how community engagement is supposed to be done. And so about 6 years ago, we made the decision to innovate how we serve by offering services to businesses and nonprofits to help them build their capacity for volunteer and employee engagement. So think of us as your outsourced solution for community engagement. So to your question, Corey, youth in vulnerable communities is our primary target. And then we also target corporations and their employees, nonprofits and their leaders to help them build their volunteer engagement capacity. And then also the greater community at large, who benefits from all this good work that happens in the community.
Thank you. Terri, DeShuna, want to jump in?
Our audience. So Quilly TV, we, as I said, we're a streaming service that focuses on the African diaspora. It's funny whenever, like, especially early on, people would say, DeShuna has an African-American streaming service. I'm like, African American history. Like, we're for everyone. I always tell people, like, our main focus is the global Black community. And so that consists of anyone who is of African descent anywhere in the world. And so my main mission is to dispel stereotypes and change the Black narrative, really be a healing space for people of African descent, where they can come and see themselves and celebrate themselves and not be bombarded with sometimes stereotypical content you may see in mainstream media. You know, if you go to some of the mainstream streaming services for Black History Month, you may see The Help or other types of stories, The Green Book. They mean well, you know, for what they're trying to do. But, you know, for us, you know, we're 5 and 4 Black people, and we know the type of content that our customers are looking for. And so we have a lot more documentaries that are about people you never heard of before. And we want to make sure that when our customers come to the platform with our community, they see themselves. And that's our community, right? But in the same token, you know, this year we've had people who don't look like me who come to the platform. I would say last year, after what happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many others, where people were who weren't part of our community, trying to understand the Black experience. And you know, I always told some of my white friends or white allies, you know, they want to learn about being Black. If you get if you're a Black person and you get tired of sort of explaining Blackness to your white allies, then just give them Quilly TV, right? It's like as a starter kit is to understand things in a couple books too, right? And so that's why we're here. We're for everyone in that sense, where, you know, we're all about celebrating Black stories, and everyone's a part of that. We don't exclude anyone, but our first and foremost goal is to make sure that we're a safe space for Black people.
That's awesome. I love that. So I started a platform called Movement Maker in 2017. And like many of you, I, have these things that just come natural to me, but they show up consistently. And around that time, I realized, well, those are a gift to me. They're a superpower, but they're not exclusive just to me. So I could help others by teaching them how to amplify, support, or build movements for social good. So I started Movement Maker just to educate people, and to the point that both of these panelists have made, to be it, you have to see it. So sharing stories of people that build movements, and then shared the why they did it with the how, so that people left with skills, inspiration, and tools to get started. And so the more that I do that work, the more that I see people who weren't always a part of social movements for good, starting their own, and becoming movement makers in their own right. So, really getting to the heart of what we're talking about today, which is innovation. I think sometimes, we might feel pressure to think that we have to be the innovator, we have to create something new. But really, all we have to do at times is show up and inspire others to find the innovation within themselves. So, for those of you who in the chat says, it could feel awkward, it could feel heavy, it might not come natural, maybe you're innovating just by being you every day.
Thank you, man. So many gems. One thing that I'm actually just getting is that, I mean, clearly, like, each of you have done a lot of work to obviously connect to your why, but also to then do the work of actually showing up to that, and that is a beautiful thing. And each of you have built something amazing because of that. But, we want to also keep it real with the rest of the people on the call. It's not always easy, right? And I think one of the ways, and Terri, you kind of just anchored this with the ending piece, is that sometimes it might feel awkward, or it might not feel natural, or maybe that's not us. We don't think of ourselves as innovators. And so for whatever reason, those thoughts come up or they persist, they definitely affect how we actually then move into that purpose. So, I mean, maybe I'll start with you, Terri, also, because I know your book, Find Your Fire, I feel like is really like diving into this, like, how do you find that voice and actually like drive it? I think you call it like fire starting. I mean, like, what challenges do you feel like actually exist when it comes to trying to find that spark? Maybe if you want to talk about, maybe from a personal perspective, how do you connect with your innovation? How has confidence played a part of that? And then we can go to Derrin and DeShuna to also answer that question.
Sure. I don't think that what any of us do is easy, but for some reason we were called to do the work. So I call fire starters people that see things that others ignore, but they take the first step. They take action to create change. And I think that's it. So, a lot of what you just talked about, like thinking through it or confidence, I really don't think about it. I just do it. And so for me, that's how I can shed all of the things, is by not focusing on them, just focusing on the work. But the way that I'm motivated to do the work is by knowing what that why is and using it as a North Star always, not just sometimes, but always. So when I don't get, when I'm not motivated or when I'm stuck, I return to that why. And there are four things that I always talk to myself about. And the first is, the cause, which is your why. Then the second is the collective of people that you have around you. Monica has all of you around her today to show up. Who are those people that are showing up for you? They're going to give you a high five when you need it. They're going to tell you to sit down when you're wrong, or they're going to, show you the way when you need help. That collective is so important. And like when I'm stuck, they give me energy to keep going. And then the third is communicating, so sometimes it's communicating that why and the message of what you're innovating, but sometimes it's really just, communicating your obstacles. If people know the obstacles that you face and the problems you're trying to solve, they're more likely to help you work through them. And so then you're not doing it alone. And that heaviness is lifted, it becomes more bite-sized. And then you do have the space and the energy to innovate. And the last is really just doing the work and creating change. And, a lot of times that's the part where you might second guess yourself. But for me, if I just think of four things that will help me get started and just begin to knock out those four things, by the time I look back, I don't have time to look back because I'm already driving the movement and the innovation forward. So cause, collective, communicate, and change.
I love it. 4 C's. Derrin?
Yeah, for me, it's not easy. If you haven't noticed yet, I have a stuttering issue. And so I've struggled with this impediment my entire life. And so overcoming my stutter and helping find my voice and being confident enough to share my voice and speak in front of people and talk and just be myself and be comfortable in that, it's been a challenging process. It's something that not until in the recent years that I've really accepted who I am. And so with innovation and starting something, it's not only not easy to start the thing, right? But to start yourself as well. And so the advice that I always give people is, hey, first, make a decision, right? If you truly are empowered and inspired, and if you get that spark or have that fire lit, what do? You just have to make a decision and go after it. Oftentimes we get so stuck by taking that first step, and that's the hardest step. And once you do that and make that decision, the second thing that I always advise is, hey, find the right counsel, find the right people that can speak into your life, that is going to see you for who you are, that's going to speak truth to power and tell you, hey, you can't do that, or hey, you can think about this differently. Find those people that are going to truly advise you and guide you along in the right way and help pull you along. And these are also people that will remind you of your why, as Terri had alluded to. Like people that can say, hey, I see that you're not as confident right now, or you're drifting. Well, let me tell you who you are. All right. And then put some more fuel on that flame to keep you going. And then the third, I always say, hey, go all out. So it takes a lot of sacrifice to really start and do something and follow that passion and follow that purpose in your life. And it takes sacrifice in your time, your financial resources, your relationships sometimes, because you have to cut some people out and bring new people along, right? And that's a hard reality, but once we do those three things, so make the decision, find the right counsel, then go all out, then the only thing that can stop you is you. And so that's why I always say, hey, invest in yourself. No one is going to invest in you unless you invest in yourself. And the more that we do that constantly with learning with sharing of ourselves and sharing our own resources with others and our own knowledge, then the only thing that can stop us is really being not comfortable with who we are as people. And we are our own worst enemy. And I am a testament to that.
Yeah, well said. DeShuna, close us out on that one.
And it's about finding innovation, right? I want to make sure I'm still on the right topic because like the comments were amazing, Terri and Derrin. I want to make sure that I'm on the right topic. But I would say being open to continue what Derrin and Terri was saying. I've always been open, right, to what could be, and I think that has been really helpful for me to find innovation. I will say, my background is not in film and television. My background's in journalism, and so it wasn't like one day I was like, I've always wanted to have a streaming service, or like that wasn't in my trajectory. I worked at Blockbuster in high school, for goodness sakes. Like, and there wasn't even a streaming service when I was in high school. I worked at Blockbuster, okay? If some of you are probably too young to know what Blockbuster is, but back in the day, on Friday nights, you had to get movies at a store. And I was the person that I had people get late fees and people curse me out. I was the 16-year-old people cursed out because of late fees. So, and so I never saw this. I saw myself being a journalist. That's where I saw my trajectory. And one of the things about finding innovation is sort of see or being open to like what possibilities could be. And like I said, when I thought about Quality TV, I was literally flipping through a bunch of cable channels, and I was like, I didn't see what I wanted to see. I didn't see myself, and I was like, well, maybe there's a streaming service with this type of content. And I didn't see it. It's like, well, maybe literally like the idea is like, maybe I'll start it. It just popped in my head. I'll start my own streaming service, which is insane because I didn't know how to do that. I knew how to write an article. I had an online magazine. I had a radio show. I could do all that stuff very well. But how would I actually start a streaming service? It wasn't like Netflix had a playbook. Like literally, when I started my online magazine, there was a book on how to start an online magazine for dummies. Like there was a book. There is no how to start a streaming service for dummies. It doesn't exist. And I just became open to learning what the next step would be. And so I think a lot of times I think earlier everyone was talking about like, everyone's thinking about this whole big thing. For me, starting small was, okay, let me do some research. Let me be open to understanding what this will look like if I do decide to go down this journey of starting a streaming service. Let me be open to talking with people who are much smarter than I am, who are in tech and who's a VC. And I didn't know anything about the VC world. I didn't know anything about investors. I didn't know anything about the disparity for Black women getting investment dollars. I had no idea what that looked like. I really went in blind. And I was open, I was absorbing all this information. It didn't stop at the show, right? It wasn't like, oh my God, this is gonna be too hard, so I'm gonna quit. I said, you know what, and this is the part you talk about confidence. I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm gonna figure this out, and if this is for me, I'm gonna do it. I'm also a very spiritual person, and so when I didn't get the first bit of money, 2 years later I tried again, and I remember I was a finalist again. And I remember praying to God literally, because one of the things that for me being open is also making sure I'm on the right path, that God or universe, whoever you say, is like you're on the right path and you're not detouring and focusing on something that may not be your future goals, right? And so I always want to be on the right path. I never want to be on the path that I'm not supposed to be on. I want to do the work that God wants me to do, and that's very important to me. I was working on the radio show, the online magazine. I'm like, is this my path, or is this Quality TV thing my path? I don't know. So I really want to win that money. I remember crying in the shower, like, God, I want to win this money so bad, but if this is not for me, I want it now. I'm just, and FYI, I do want the money. I'm not saying I don't want it, but if it's not for me, then don't let me get it. Okay. And I was boo-hooing because I really wanted to win, but I said, I want to go down the path you want me to go down. I don't want to go down any old path. And I want it. And so that keeps me going, right? That's the confidence, because I know that when times are hard, I get reminded of that day in the shower crying about what what path am I supposed to go on? And so I always tell people to remember those moments, or remember maybe someone telling you, and that gives you a confidence. You know what? You should go do this, or a customer says something to you, or a fan encourages you. Like, those are things that would give you the confidence to continue to do the work. Because, and when you hear those things, it makes you feel like, okay, I'm here, I'm really supposed to be doing this as an entrepreneur, as an innovator. You're gonna get those moments where you're down and out. And you always need those moments of reflection, and those people who are always, as both Terri and Derrin said, being your cheerleaders. I'm very intentional, as Monica was saying about being intentional. I'm very intentional about the people who I surround myself around. There were friends I had when I first started Quilly TV, don't have it anymore, because they were Debbie Downers. And as an entrepreneur, you come a Debbie Downer anyway, because you doubt yourself sometimes, but you have to pick yourself back up. But you need those friends who would say, girl, are you crazy? Let's go have that mimosa. We can't mimosa now because of COVID, but before COVID, my friends, let's go have that mimosa. Let's take a deep dive and let's figure this out. Like, those are friends you want to have. And that's really helped me with my confidence, with me pushing forward, as well as, being spiritual and having the guiding light as far as where I should be going in my life.
I love
so I'm
it.
going to answer your question, because Terri and Derrin did such a great job.
Yeah, you dropped truth. And Terri, do you want to do a quick follow-up?
Well, I mean, there's so much that was said, and I love all of it. And it's not just the Debbie Downers, right? It's the friends that don't understand you have to be focused. And they're like, what do you mean you can't come to happy hour? Why are you always so busy? They're not your people. Your people are going to remind you to, have self-care. They're going to ask you if, you need dinner brought to you tonight so that you can remain focused. That's your tribe. But I wanted to take a TV time out, because, this is a Black History Month program, and we'd be remiss if we just didn't talk about the obvious. Derrin talked about overcoming stuttering. I have hidden disabilities as well. I can't see out of one eye or hear out of one ear. And I'm sure there's something that DeShuna could share with us too. But even beyond that, we're all Black. That is a whole nother added complexity to the work that has to be done. And we don't have to school any of you on that, because you all live through this summer. And hopefully that is something that is not lost on you. But even today, 6 months out of that, those things still exist. And so there's like this just kind of like these two boxes that we live in. One are the people that are making what I'm calling COVID come-ups. They're the people that have been ready, that have been hustling, that have been innovating. And so now a door has been open that's letting them come in. And, a lot of people are saying, well, of course that, this policy expert is getting a job because there's a heightened awareness for Black people. No, they're getting that job because they are ready and they stayed ready. And when that door opened, they leveled up and walked through that door. And then there's another bucket of people that are still out there, that are still hustling, that people aren't making a way for. And so it's going to take all of us to find a way to let those people in, because the biases that were there in May have not all left the building, so we just need to think of how might we bring others along as we're going through these innovative journeys. And I saw Shannon is on the call. Shannon and I are both from a place called Lafayette, Louisiana. And, Lafayette is a place that is, to this day, is severely segregated. If Mardi Gras were happening right now, Mardi Gras is kind of canceled, but there's a white parade and a Black parade, and it's split like between lunch, and the white male parade, the King parade, goes before the white female parade, the Queen parade, then the Black parade, and then the Independent parade, which is mostly pets. So our world really has not changed. And so I can't stress it enough that because we're innovators, people expect us to think out of the box. And sometimes thinking out of the box is lifting someone else up as you climb.
Yes. Well said. Yes, on it. I'm literally gonna segue into that, because something a few of you said, and just as a time check, like I'll ask this one question to the group, and then we can go into questions from the audience. So be thinking of your questions as we kind of close with this thought. But one of the things that came up for many of you is like, listen to the right people. Like, you get feedback from the right people, like have the right tribe around you, and then also understand that there are going to be people that are the wrong people. And so whatever dimensions they're giving you feedback from or on is definitely not helping you on your pathway to innovating or creating the thing that you're creating. I know that when we had all talked on a prior call, I was sharing that I literally had an opportunity to like take on like a senior manager role at a company, and then ask the wrong person, like at the time, my direct manager, like, all right, what do you think I need to do? And not only did they not lift me up, but they actually told me, actually, there are all these things we think that you can't do. Like, we don't think that you can communicate as well as you think, or write as well as you think, or can be in a room with gravitas as well as you think. And so I listened to them. And, you know, I think it was only after the fact, when the moment passed, that I asked somebody who was in my camp, like, what's the real deal? And, you know, it's one of those things where, hey, you learn from that lesson. And as we think about innovating, it certainly is about surrounding yourself with the right people. But I am curious, as we like, before we head into questions from the audience, and just anybody want to chime in on the panel, like, clearly you have dealt with people telling you can't do something or you can't do it, maybe along the dimensions of even what Terri brought up, what Derrin brought up. You know, there might be something they're like, this is going to be a limitation for you. So it's going to happen. How do you push past that? How do you push through that and do it anyway?
Faith and fortitude. I share this story in my book, but when I was applying for a job at the American Heart Association, I made it to the finalists, and I had lobbied somewhere else before, and they invited me to apply for the job. They came and told me that there was a job opening. So I was down to the final two, and the manager selected an older woman. At the time, I was like 22 or 23. And, you know, he told me, probably would not get away with this today, but there was someone that was more seasoned and experienced that we just had to go with. Well, he called 6 weeks later, ironically, on Fat Tuesday. I was at a Mardi Gras parade, and offered me the job because she didn't work out. And so, you know, that's where you have to have a mix of confidence, swagger, and just know that what is meant for you is meant for you. And so I started off by telling him the price that I was that day was more than I was 6 weeks before. And I was going to work hard for him. And he, you know, while I did not want to say, I told you so, one day he would have to admit to me that he told me he made the wrong hire. And so 6 months later, I was named National Advocacy Staff of the Year for the entire American Heart Association. And I had only been lobbying a total of 14 months in my career. And so, you know, sometimes you just have to know you have what it takes and not listen to the haters, not listen to the potential roadblocks that people will throw in front of you, because people will throw obstacles in front of you and act like they didn't. And you also have to keep out an eye for those that really do have your back and lean on them just to push you along the way.
Yeah, thank you, Terri. Is Derrin, DeShuna, anything to add? Moment.
Yeah. Yeah, when I played football in high school, my football coach came up to me when I was looking at colleges. I was getting offers from like Brown and a couple small schools and a couple other D1 offers. And I asked my football coach, I said, hey, can I go to IU and play football? And he said, Derrin, you're not D1 material. That killed my confidence. And I ended up playing at a D3 school because I didn't think I was D1 material because the coach told me I wasn't. Right. And I share that story because I listened to that voice knowing that I was worth more than that. Right. And I think once I found my why and found my purpose, and no one could tell me anything differently. Right. Because I know my why, because I know my purpose, because I know that something greater is pulling me, is pulling my heart, is pulling everything that I do, then those voices get quieter. Right. You'll still have those voices. You'll still have those people saying you can't, or you won't, or this contract is too big, that company is too big. But if you know your why, if you know your purpose, and if you prepare enough to be ready for when those opportunities come your way, then like I said earlier, I mean, the loudest voice that's going to hold you back is your own. And so for me in my own career, I mean, there was a time when Proact's been around for 10 years, and I started Proact at the tender age of 22 years old and heard no probably 100 times a day. Right. And then once we started to get some traction and get some exposure, I mean, we grew in 7 years' time to serving over 2,000 people. And in 1 year after that 2,000 mark, we scaled up to 10,000 people that year. In that period, I mean, we were growing so fast that I allowed pride and ego to take priority over my passion and purpose. And I say that because that pride and ego allowed me to, or maybe put up walls with my wife, my family, to put up walls with people at work. And we were growing so fast, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I wouldn't ask for help. I was too prideful to ask for help because people looked up to me. I mean, we had 12 staff at the time. We're serving all these people and doing good work, but I didn't want anyone to know that, hey, I don't know it all, or I don't have it all together. And so when we hear those voices, the loudest voice is going to be your own. And if we can do the work to be open and vulnerable, once I learned that lesson, then Proact's in the past few years has been the best organization that's ever been in this decades-long history, because we know the power of vulnerability, the power of transparency, and the power that can do to help others open up their hearts. Help.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable with us on the call too. DeShuna?
Yeah, so for me, it's really interesting because I'm from Memphis, so I'm from the South as well, living in the DC area. And I went to college in Mississippi, Jackson State University. I moved to the DC area, and it was like a shock for me because people were very pretentious. And if they felt like you weren't on a certain level, they told you like to your face. And so it was a big learning curve for me, and it really built up my confidence, and also kind of I had a wall because I wasn't sure who to talk to, who not to talk to. But I did overcome that over time. I always tell people that as an entrepreneur, you grow like this scab on yourself because you hear so much negativity that my skin is so strong. It shouldn't be that way, right? People shouldn't treat people a certain way. People shouldn't say things to people. Like, for instance, people, Terri and Derrin gave examples. I was told a nobody, like literally to my face one time by someone in DC. We were trying to do a collaboration together, and her particular idea was really more about entertainment. I really wanted to focus on social justice. It was during CBC. For those who don't know what the DC area, CBC is like for Black folks for like a week. The town is everybody grandma from Al Sharpton to Lil Wayne, maybe, I don't know, like everybody's here. And
Black adult prom.
Yeah, it's literally, yeah. And I wanted to focus on social justice. She wanted to focus more on the entertainment side. And I was like, no, like, I really believe it should be this way. And she's like, we have these big sponsors and you're a nobody, DeShuna, you're a nobody. You are a nobody 3 times. And it really hurt my feelings. I knew that people probably thought I was a nobody, how I was treated, but like for someone to say it to me, like it's like a dagger in my heart. I walked away and I went home and I cried. I don't cry a lot, actually. I know I mentioned crying twice, but I actually don't cry that much. But what I will say is that, based off of those experiences, like, you just keep it moving. I've been told no, like Derrin said, I've been told no so many times. I've been told Black people don't want to watch documentaries. I've been told Black people only you should partner with World Star Hip Hop, or if you want Quilly TV to be successful, you need to have Real Housewives of Atlanta or a Ratchet channel, because that's the only type of content. And these are actually Black investors telling me this, right? I'm not talking about white folks. Now, the BET comment was from a white investor, and so I just knew what vision I had for the company, and I didn't listen to that. I've always been really, really stubborn, and ever since I was a kid. A lot of people didn't see a lot of potential in me growing up. You know, in Memphis, I was an average student. I was pretty quiet, very quiet person. And a lot of people were like, oh, DeShuna, she'll probably just do hair or something. Like, that's what people thought I would do. They were shocked I went to college. And I proved a lot of people wrong. They're shocked that I own a company, like, and I go home, they're like, I just can't believe, DeShuna, because when people would tell me that I couldn't do it, it was fuel. All right, what just, I can't do what? Bet. That's me. Bet. I'm going to prove you wrong. And that has been my entire life, just proving people wrong. And I've never been a really confident person, but I'm also a very stubborn person. And being stubborn has grown my confidence to the level where I'm confident in myself and what I've been able to do with this company and just with my life and the impact I've been able to make and the impact that the filmmakers and the content they're able to make on the platform for the people. So yeah, I can go on about, I'll end it there.
No, thank you. It's so real. I mean, I feel like there were so many good gems there. I want to take a moment just to see, again, if people have any questions. And I'll have a few people on the call. So I would say feel free to drop it into the chat if you want me to like ask it of the group, or just come off mic if you want to. This is some real knowledge right here. Again, you've seen the bios. So Saren, I actually see the hand raised. So we're gonna, like, you want to come off mic and ask your question?
Oh, yes. I can.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. Hi, my name's Saren, and thank you, Derrin, Terri, and DeShuna for today. I feel like my view is being widened. And a little bit about me, I grew up in the suburbia of Ohio, and this summer so all throughout my life, I thought I was, you know, like pretty well aware about everything that's going on. But then this summer I was, had a moment of self-aware, like a realization that there were a lot of things that I wasn't aware about, like what you had mentioned, Terri, like the Mardi Gras traditions. I had no idea that those things still existed. And Derrin, like what you said, I didn't know what I didn't know. I definitely felt that way, especially about the Black community in America today. And now I feel like I'm at a place after educating myself with like documentaries like 13th and like reading books. I feel like I find myself in a place where I don't know what to do now with all the information that I have as somebody who is not African American. Like, how can I then be a ally in the community and actually contribute to the movement? And what are your thoughts on that?
Ooh, you spoke a word right there. That's actually, I'll jump into my little spiel. So I actually do work around allyship, but I'm really curious of the others' thoughts. So I'll just quickly say, whenever I think of allyship, something that was said earlier about innovation is that we often focus on the big when there are actually a bunch of small steps that will make a big difference. And so for me, as I think about allyship, it's like, ask yourself actually, like, what are you doing to like confront kind of everyday moments? So in those moments where you're in an office or in a school setting or you're wherever you are, how are you actually showing up for the individual every day? The second thing is like actually the work to confront these ugly truths about like the world we're in or the environment that we occupy. So what work are you doing to build awareness? What work are you doing to confront your own biases or privilege, or acknowledging how different things work in the world based on how we're perceived? And then finally, we all have privilege. So there's a recognition that because of the intersection of identities that we have in the world, we're going to benefit from that, even if we work hard on top of that to make the most of it. And so how can you leverage that privilege in support of someone else, and not, you know, in a paternalistic way, but actually in a, I hear what you need and I can support you by being in a room that you cannot, and advocating for you, or bringing a chair into that room so you can sit at the table. But curious if anybody else on the panel wants to jump in on that question.
Yeah, I think that's good, Corey. I think it's very important, Saren, to really start with understanding yourself first and being aware of what you didn't know. And that takes some time to really learn, to read all you can, to listen to new people talking to you that don't look like you, to read new books. Like I asked one colleague of mine who asked the same question recently, and I said, hey, do you have any books in your home from Black authors that your kids, she asked me, how can I teach my kids this stuff? And she didn't have one book from a Black author, right? Not one book from an author that wasn't white or wasn't, that didn't look like her or her kids. And so just diversify yourself and your sphere of influence. And that is just 3 feet in front of you. I don't know if you guys can see me, but we always, like Corey said, I mean, we think that, I mean, this is a really big systemic issue that we see in our society right now that you're touching on, Saren. But the way that we can unpack it is to build relationships with people that are different than us. And it's not enough just to know yourself, to really unpack and internalize this work. We have to do the work to engage. And so my work rests in really helping people engage, and with people that are from diverse populations, because you can't truly engage with people truly if you don't understand the social context that they're living in. I can't serve poor people if I don't understand poverty. I can't serve Black and brown people if I don't understand racism. And so we have to do the work to understand that social context so that we can understand how to best help the other navigate the systems that we are benefiting from.
Right.
And that goes for me, right? I'm a Black male. I am a male. I have male privilege. How can I help the women in my life navigate the system of patriarchy? How can I help people who are not straight navigate the systems that benefit straight people, right? I mean, it goes on all facets, because we have to recognize, as Corey said, our own privilege, our own power that we have, that we can use to really help others see the people that we are seeing.
Love it. Love it. So we have time maybe for one more question. So I'm going to pass
I
it
want to
to.
jump in real quick though.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, again, Shannon and I, we just grew up in a place that's incredibly segregated. You know, I went to prom in the 90s. There was a white prom and a Black prom. I got to go to both because the guy I was dating he was Black, but he was cool with the white kids. You know, so don't think that people that are close to you and your age haven't experienced racism at its extremes. And so those people are coming to every table with, you know, a lens and lived experiences. And I love what Corey and Derrin said. That is at a very high level. So like, I want to encourage all of you, if you don't know what to do, what if that first step, just do what's right every day. Just treat people how you would treat others. And an example that I would offer up as how you do that is I was a member of an organization, and a volunteer organization. And in the 85 years of the organization, I was the highest ranking African American ever. And so I was being considered to be nominated for president. And so a lot of the white women were starting to like, oh man, clutching the pearls. They were getting uncomfortable because it was a spot that they thought was for them. And so in one board meeting, we were going over like who would get promoted, I guess, in everyday terms, to the next level of membership. And so there were women that might have missed a meeting. There were women that might have missed a task. And I'm like, we need to be member centric. Who cares? Like, let them go up. But there was another woman who was determined to follow the bylaws to the point where she was threatened by my approach of being member centric. And she started yelling at me for about 20 minutes. And I don't think she would have yelled at anyone else at the table because they were white, but she felt threatened by me in a different approach, something that just seemed very authentic and was creating followership, that she yelled at me. That's fine. That's her bad, right? Not right, but her thing. Where everyone else went wrong, and this is where you can make a difference, no one stopped her. No one took up for me. No one said, hey, Becky, and her name is Becky. That is not right. You know, like, we will not treat each other in that way. And that is what you can do every day. I'm gonna stop because I'll have a soapbox.
You're about to preach.
You felt that, huh?
I did. Man, okay. So I know we're getting close to time. I did ask Erin if she wanted to ask her question. So if you all will just bear with us just a little bit longer, we'll get that question in and get some truth dropped in here, and then we'll close out with Monica. So Erin, if you still want to ask your question.
I do. Thank you so much for allowing me to ask my question. I actually came across this this forum or this meeting. I'm at a loss for words for it because I saw Quayle TV and I wanted to speak to DeShuna because I'm an actress, and I wanted to know how you go about selecting the shows on your platform. I know, like, of course, you want to reach the diaspora, but then you also have a certain standard that you want to maintain. So with that being said, how would you go about it? Because I'm also writing something too, so you might hear from me in the future.
Hey, Erin, thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'll be honest, whenever I hear people like, I came in for Quayle TV, I am super honored. Like, I started Quayle TV with $20,000. And so, okay, I'm just gonna, if I start, getting teary-eyed, but to answer your question, yeah, so as far as like the type of content we're looking for, the lead character has to be of African descent. The film has to be in a film festival. It does have to be Sundance or Tribeca. It could be Gary, Indiana International Film Festival. The reason we ask for film festivals is because we just want it to be a first vetting process that someone thought it was good enough to screen at a venue. And beyond that, we just look for content that's not monolithic or demeaning or stereotypical. So that is the lens that we look at. Just want to make sure that we're not adding fuel to the flames when it comes to particular stereotypes about the Black community, no matter where the community is, whether it's in America or somewhere like in Brazil or some part of Africa or Europe, wherever. So we're pretty open and flexible. If you have any questions, about any more questions about submissions, you can just email me at hello@quayle.tv.
Okay, thank you so much. You would definitely hear from me at hello@quayle.tv. But I just wanted to say, because I did come for her, I did get a lot from everybody else too. So I'm happy that I came for the entire thing. But yes, thank you so much, DeShuna. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Erin. Thank you.
Thank you for staying. DeShuna is a draw. It's okay. But yeah, thank you for staying. All right, so with that, let's toss it back to Monica again. Thank you, Monica, for having us here on behalf of InnovatorsBox, and we'll toss it back to you to close us out.
Well, first, thank you all for being here. Can we do a virtual applause and gratitude? I know we're a few minutes over, but it is huge gratitude. As you can imagine, all 4 of these individuals are extremely busy. And so I just thank from my heart for taking the time to not only be here, sharing your truth, and really kind of challenging us to think about this more deeply, intentionally. And again, one of my favorite, have ownership in knowing that we can do something about it, whether it's being more aware about diversity, inclusion, equity, and just realizing that, hey, if somebody the next time says that you can't do something, tell them back, show with your actions, as they have all shared. Don't let that be the defining, because that is not the true part of who you are. And I think you all being here already is a testament to that you're so much more than, whatever definition that other people have said, because that's not true. You get to define who that is in every day and what you do. And so please, we look forward to continuing these conversations. I've been very intentional, as you've noticed, in who we get to share. It's not just people who are leading and innovating. It's really coming from the heart. And I think I'm a true believer that that's a different level of innovation and quality that we get out, not only in how they lead, but also in the impact they create. And so we look forward to seeing many of you at their next one. We'll continue on these conversations with female innovators and how they do it differently from different lens. I'll be moderating that in March. And so for those who haven't signed up both, make sure you let me know. I'll follow up later, but please follow all 4 of these individuals, say hello, and we're so grateful you're all here. We hope that this led you in accomplishing my goal, which is asking more questions and being more curious. Have I done that? Have we done that? So perfect. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful month, evening, and continue to celebrate Black History Month every day, every day. So Corey, anything else you want to add?
No, ditto, follow these amazing people. Yes.
And we will see you all soon again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Monica.